right. Well, happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to another Learning Tech Talks, where we are exploring the landscape of all things learning technology. I honestly really don't even know at this point. And I got to say, it's a little strange for me being back. I haven't been live with a guest, Kate, in like 7 weeks, I think 7 or 8 weeks, something like that. So
Yeah, I noticed.
it was it's like a little, I did one solo live session because I was like really bored one day and I was like, I'm just going to go live and see where this goes. And then it was 2 hours later. But so this is actually super fun. So for those of you who are joining, I'm joined by Kate Udalova. She's one of the founders of 7Taps. We're going to be talking about microlearning, but we're going to be going way beyond just microlearning because you've been doing a lot of cool stuff with the product. We're going to talk about kind of how some of this futuristic tech that everybody's hearing about is integrating into this. But we're also just going to talk about that life because we've both been very busy, but also being very intentional about not being busy. I think that's a fair way to put it. So, but before we get into it, for those of you who are joining, it's good to see you all. Be sure to comment in, let us know where you are. Comment along the way, say, hey, I would love this to just be more of a dialogue than, well, it'll be a dialogue no matter what, because Kate, you and I are just chatting, but you're also, those of you watching, listening live are welcome to join us in that. But before we get into it, Kate, you're not, every time I talk to you, I swear, every time I talk to you, it's like, where are you today? Are you, sometimes it's Florida. Sometimes it's over in East Europe. Sometimes, and today it's neither of those. So where are you in the world right now?
I'm in Dubai, and actually, just like that's the perfect spot for me to be, because it's somewhere, halfway between the United States and the Eastern Europe where my parents live. So I just decided that this could be a great place to spend some time. And just like being a digital nomad, have some luxury to choose the places according the climate season.
Yeah, well, that's that. We were talking about that because I'm like, Wisconsin's not really the place to be in January. So you got the best of the weather. But you mentioned the digital nomad thing, and like I said, I really do feel like every single time I talk to you, it's somewhere different. So do you have like a permanent, like I usually am here, or do you really just kind of go, well, not particularly?
Well, not particularly.
I
Actually,
love it.
that's a privilege and that's a luxury. I can afford it myself because I'm 31. I have a company that is fully remote, and while despite the fact that we are located in Florida, like we have folks working for 7Taps in different parts of the world. We have clients in different parts of the world, so we just need to, be on the same page with them in the same time and zones. And so it works for us at this moment. And this way of life actually helps a lot to streamline some processes in your life. I'm still learning how to do that properly, but I see great value in trying this experience out. I'm pretty sure that it won't last long, since it definitely has some disadvantages. But as for now, it's just the perfect solution.
Okay. Well, and what you say about that, I love the fact that you say, what, right now it works, because I think there are certain things where it's like there's seasons where things work really well, and then there's seasons where they don't. And being able to say, right now it works great. Like, why would we plant a permanent locale when the nature of the company, the place we're in with the company, it actually really works for us to be able to be nomadic and go where we need to be. Live it, man. Like, just do it, go for it. Cause I'm sure, like you said, there'll be a season where you go, we can't do that. We got to be a little more planted in and things like that. So how long have you been there?
Since November. So for me, pretty long time.
Okay.
And actually, for everyone who is thinking of visiting Dubai, just right now is the best time to do that because the weather is so very comfortable. I can't imagine what it's going to be in the summertime. Probably not so very walking outside friendly, but now it's just terrific, and you can go out and see so many things here. And that's just the city kind of worth visiting. It has so many things to do sightseeing and just to see how stuff goes here, because that's just different part of the world. It's different.
Yeah. Well, looking at the comments, we've got a lot of folks who are stateside right now, which makes sense given the time of day that we're doing this. But I know that the folks who will watch and listen to it after the fact will be from all over the place. So there you go. If Dubai is a good place to be at this time of year, but sounds like come summertime, Kate Udalova will not be in Dubai in the summer. Most likely you will have nomadically moved on to somewhere a little more formidable for the summertime.
I just understood that I cannot see the comments in the chat.
You probably can't. Oh. You probably can't, but we got folks from New Mexico, we got folks from Kentucky, we got folks in the UK, so we got some Europe representing. Oregon, we're all over. Oh, so we got Seattle. Yeah, see, we got a good spread of folks, but with the exception of Deborah, I think we've got mostly US representing live. So, okay, so let's transition a little bit, and folks along the way, feel free to jump in. I can see the comments, Kate. Just so you know, I wouldn't recommend trying to open LinkedIn and watch the comments. I've watched people. Boss, I know Boss is in New Jersey. Boss, you're back from Mexico. Hello. Though, Boss. So welcome back from Mexico. Because if you didn't know, Boss was taking some time in Mexico. Speaking of our offstage conversation about taking time off. So, but for those who may not be quite as familiar with celebrity learning star Kate Udalova, let's talk a little bit about your background and 7TAPS, because I'm guessing some people might be like, I may be kind of familiar with it. I might not. How did you end up starting this in the first place? Because your background's kind of marketing, isn't it?
Well, I started with a marketing background, and I worked for an L&D consulting company. So I kind of was exposed to lots of stuff connecting to learning and development. At some moment, I started doing marketing for learning and development, and I kind of, got that understanding that you can have the best content in the world, but you won't get much attention unless you promote it within the company, and unless you translate it into the language that is more consumable to your audience. So there are lots of stuff from marketing that you can borrow to leverage your learning and development strategy. And that's how I kind of moved to the learning and development field. I joined the L&D consulting team. Then I came up with my first startup. Then just the idea of 7TAPS came up to me. So that's how I ended up, and probably not ended up, but I have started a new journey in my life. And it's been 2 years since 7TAPS is on the market. We started one.
I still remember the first time you were just, it's funny that it's 2 years. Which in some ways is not very much time, and in other ways is like a lifetime when you think about everything that's right. Like it is in some ways it very much is a lifetime. But I still remember getting a message. I can't remember if it was from you or it was one of your co-founders. I still remember when you were just getting started, getting a LinkedIn message. And you were doing guerrilla marketing with stuff. When you first got started, you were just reaching out to people going, hey, here's this thing. And I remember being like, I get hit with like, I don't know how many of these messages, but they seem like they're actually doing something pretty interesting. And that's actually what started our conversation. And it's crazy to think 2 years, because with the Microlearning conference and everything, you guys, I mean, it feels a lot longer than 2 years in a good way.
Yeah, it is, definitely. So when I was thinking about the last time we met at Learning Tech Talks, and I realized it was 1.5 years ago, it just kind of came to me like as if it were a couple of days earlier. But a lot had happened, and That's an incredible journey I'm dealing with right now, and I'm hoping our users do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, definitely, for anybody who's watching or listening that hasn't connected with either of us, definitely do that. But so you, and I think the marketing thing you brought up, I won't turn this into a marketing for L&D piece other than I like what you highlighted, because sometimes I've seen L&D say, well, we need to be more like marketing. And the parts that sometimes gets highlighted, I'm like, yeah, I don't really think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about acting more like marketing. But I think you hit on some of the deeper ones, like knowing your audience, knowing how to reach your audience, figuring out how to actually get the message out there about what you're doing, and not just send an email blast on a quarterly basis saying we have more training opportunities. So I think you've hit on some of those deeper parts. But what then led to, okay, I'm doing some consulting for an L&D company in marketing, to, hey, let's build our own development platform. I mean, yours is really a development experience platform, but like, why make that jump?
It's a development platform plus delivery platform. So just for the record.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it is, because you develop the content, but it's actually also how you deliver it as well. So
That's pretty easy. Like, I dealt with lots of customers. I've seen so many software types, and the problem was almost the same every time. Like, people invest, learning and development teams invest a lot into creating content that
a lot.
is not that engaging as it should be. And I was always thinking about how could I leverage this. At the same time, I'm a huge fan of simple yet powerful products. And you know that I'm kind of always very careful about adding new features to 7tabs, because I want to keep it as simple as possible. That's our core value, and it won't ever change. Like, your experience as a content creator, whether you are an instructional designer or whether you are a person, kind of a manager who
Right.
for some
A subject
reason
matter
needs to
expert.
create, yeah, absolutely. You can go to 7tabs and create some learning assets. And of course, just you can't compare the learning asset created by instructional design with all the science behind with some asset created by a person who has no experience in that.
Yeah,
The
it's just
thing is,
taking something that's in their head and popping
yeah,
it in there.
absolutely. And sometimes it just what matters most, because at the end of the day, you need to deliver some tricks and some instructions that will help change people's behavior, that will help them do their job better. And it's not about spending weeks or months on learning the tool, or just getting professional in some fundamental features of the tool. With 7tabs, even if you are new to microlearning, if you are completely new to instructional design and e-learning, you can sign up and you can create the content in minutes. That's just what people say.
Yeah. Well, and the simplicity of it, I mean, I have to imagine, because the other thing that's really unique about you and the 7tabs team that I've observed, it's still weird to think that you're like 2 years ago, because it's like, really, that's it, 2 years ago. But you're right, it is. But what's crazy thinking about that is you're one of the most engaged companies I've seen with its customers. I mean, really, you are very engaged with your customers, and you're very in tune with what they're talking about. And I mean, I just love the crowdsourcing you do. You encourage people to come up with creative ideas and share them. But I have to imagine that also creates some challenges, because, like you said, you have to be very protective of what do we really put in. Because I have to imagine 7tabs, if you just did everything everybody said, it could become a Franken platform very quickly. I have to imagine that there's probably no shortage of, wouldn't it be great if it did this? And could you make it do this? And could you make it do this? And if you weren't careful, it could turn into a kitchen sink product that ends up missing what you said, which is you were very intentional about what it's designed to do.
Yeah, and we have, I'd say, two things that help us to move in that direction. First one, is what I called customer-driven product management approach. And customers' feedback just is what matters most. And we take it really seriously. Sometimes people ask for a feature, and then in 2-3 weeks, we get back to them saying, hey, check it out in the product already. They're like, wow, I couldn't even imagine that you would do that. But we just kind of carefully weigh all the potential that feature may bring to other clients, and we decide whether to add it or not. We really, that process of deciding what to add is, it takes time and efforts and lots of discussions and arguments and just everything.
Well, and
there's so heated debate.
Well, and so I'd love to do, again, even just for people to hear some of this, because I think just even understanding the process of an organization to add some of this, because the other thing too is not only is there this, the process of vetting through it, but then also it's very easy if you haven't actually developed a product to recognize how much goes into some of this stuff. And again, part of this show, I want to talk about some of the things you've done with it, because honestly, if you use 7 taps 2 years ago versus if you use it now, I mean, it's amazing what you've done with the product. But it's not something that you just go, wouldn't it be great if you could have it do this? And you just go, yes, snap your fingers and it happens type of a thing. So you described a little bit about that process. Like, what does that look like as people, you crowdsource or your customers drive your product roadmap? How does that play out? Like, how do you actually then work through that process?
Well, first of all, we have live product chat in 7 taps, and there are no bots or robots. There is me most of the time, my colleagues, and we are responding 24 hours per week. Frankly, it takes minutes for us to respond, and we talk to real users. We listen to their problems. We ask what they like about the tool. We ask what they dislike. We ask what they would like us to add, and not only ask what features they actually lack, but we ask for the business need they are trying to solve with that
feature.
So
the why behind it, not just
absolutely.
I want this, but why? What are you trying to do? Okay.
And that actually helps a lot. And I can't tell you how many times I got some requests for features. And when we dived into conversations, we kind of realized with the customer that it's actually already available within the current features with 7 tabs, or it can be recreated with another feature. You don't necessarily need that or those.
Yeah.
So it's always a matter of open and honest conversation. When you are not only trying to kind of when you are not asking for, oh, please make me feel good about this product.
Yeah.
But also about responding to what bothers people.
As you bring this up, first of all, I think it's awesome that you do that, because I think it'd be so easy to just look at mass market and just add features blindly, but actually taking the time to talk about it. Because one of the things you just brought up, and I think there's some major lessons we can learn from that in learning and development when we think about how we consult with our clients on what they're trying to do. Because I'm guessing, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember this from I used to be a software trainer, and I worked between product development and our customers. And I can't tell you the number of times that a customer said, I want the system to do this. And if I had not taken the time to have that conversation and go, help me understand what you're trying to do before I just go back to product and say, this feature's broken or you need to do this. Help me understand what you're trying to do. Like, why do you think you need that? And actually talking through that, the number of times similar to what you described, either there was another way of doing it already in the system. It's just they were thinking this way, and you opened it and it was like, oh, actually, what if we did it like this? Or you just actually understand a deeper problem. And I have to imagine there's times where you have those conversations, you go back and engineer, if this is really what the problem is, they're saying they want this, but I bet if we did this, it would actually be better way to do it and solve more problems. And then you come back and people go, you blew my mind. I said I wanted this, but you actually went a level above that and
Yeah.
solved my problem in a better way.
It's always a matter of conversation, of open conversation. And actually, just getting back to the previous question, when I tried to describe two things that help us to move in the direction of keeping the product simple yet powerful, is having a super talented team. I'm just sending kudos to all the folks who have been contributing to the 7TAP success. It won't be possible with the folks really passionate and enthusiastic about what they're building. Like when I say that we have heated debates on new features or on the way they should look like, I'm not exaggerating. We do have, but they are so very productive. They are so very inspiring. Like listening to others, not just asking R&D team to implement something, but listening to what they think will help to kind of solve this problem. So that conversation comes up within the company, and it's an instant conversation, never ending with customers.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You obviously, whatever you're doing around customer driven product development, I think there's plenty of organizations that could take some tips from that, because I mean, even Tristan in the chat, right? I mean, not only is it you're adding new features and functionalities, but I like the word delighting, right? And that's something that I see with the people that use your product is they're delighted by the product. They go use it and they discover new features, or they find that it's easier than they thought, or what they did with it. There's a lot of customer delight I see in people who use it. And even the energy when we have the 7TAPS Microlearning Conference, the energy that people bring to it, and they're excited to do things. And I just, again, I think it's fascinating how well you've done that.
I'd love to share a tiny fact, but that fact makes me really proud of what we're doing. We had our first DevLearn Expo last year, and my colleagues who presented 7TAPS at the booth came back from the show kind of surprised by the number of people who stopped by our booth just to say how much they love 7TAPS. And just for the record, those folks are super experienced in working at various booths, hundreds of them, just kind of with other employers. And it was kind of an eye-opening experience for them that presenting a company at an expo may bring that excitement and that pleasure. And that's really amusing. I was so sad that I couldn't make it to the DevLearn show, but I'm definitely do it next year, and I just need to feel that love. I just want to shake all the hands and to give all the hugs I can. And I'm just thinking that this is always an exchange of energies. Like I do all I can, I give out all I can, and that's what our customers do. I really appreciate our customers, our users. They're so open, they're so supportive. From the first day of 7TAPS, they've been inspiring, encouraging, sometimes criticizing, and that's exactly what helps us keep rolling. Probably for the record, we should pinpoint what 7TAPS is, because I'm pretty sure that there are some
there probably are, but and we'll transition to the overview piece of that. But I think, again, your service to your customers, I think what you're seeing, my observation from the outside, is the 7TAPS team, because it's you and I've gotten to know the rest of the team. Aline, I see you in the chat too, it's sitting here. It's so engaging, but it's genuine. It's genuine. Your engagement with your customers is not a phony, hey, we just have to do this thing, thanks for your time. It's a genuine relationship that you're building with your customers, and it shows. It very much does. And, I like, by the way, thanks everybody for the comments. It's fun watching the comments. Sometimes there's not a ton of comments, and that's fine too. But it speaks to the difference of 7TAPS is the people who come to your live thing. It's like they want to talk about things. But it is crazy that 2 years ago, to Abby's point, if you'd said, are you familiar with 7 taps? Most people would have said, is that LinkedIn message somebody's messaging me about? And now, honestly, I don't know a whole lot of folks in the design space who at least haven't heard of it. So I think that's 2 years, right? Some companies spend decades trying to build a brand and reputation within an industry, and you've managed to do some fantastic stuff. So Natalie, yeah, we are going to, let's transition over to this, because I think we can talk more about the product and say, so what does this look like? So for those who may be listening for the first time, they're like, man, this is like a high energy session. I'm like, well, yeah, show up at a micro learning event and you'll see some energy too. But like, how do you describe it? Because I do think this is one of the things that is always challenging for tech companies, is figuring out what category they're in so that a customer knows, when do I use this thing? So when you tell people, hi, we've created 7 taps, and they go, what is that? How do you just tell people what it is?
I respond saying that it is a platform to quickly design quick launch microlearning experiences. If the conversation goes further, in most cases, yes, in all of the cases, of course, then I say something about microlearning, that it illustrates the delivery of knowledge in short and very targeted nuggets, and that it is perfect for training reinforcement, performance support, sales enablement. That's what we found out with 7 taps. So the basic thing you need to know about 7 taps, that you can create a compelling and impactful mini course in literally 15 minutes. And don't take my words for it. That's what people tell about 7 taps.
Okay. So, well, and I think I remember the first time because, again, 2 years ago, you were reaching out to me going, hey, check this out. And I remember the intuitive nature of it. You're really playing on this whole kind of stories approach to, hey, let me just tap through let me just tap through, like you said, these micro bites of reinforcement, like helping somebody just kind of keep that knowledge moving type of a thing. So, but we also said earlier that it's also delivery. So it's not just but let's talk about that, because I can imagine that sometimes when people hear, wait, so it's a development tool, but it's also a delivery tool, that it could cause some confusion for folks in terms of, wait, so is it an LMS too? And that's not what we're talking about when we say it's a delivery. So how do you help people kind of understand that, yes, you're designing things in here, but yes, it's also delivering it?
Well, first of all, it's all about, it's up to the user to decide whether they would love to share 7 taps within 7 taps itself, or whether they would love to fit 7 taps into the existing e-learning infrastructure. And now that's possible as well. In fact, when a person creates a 7 taps mini course, they see that share button and they immediately come to the sharing tab, and there are plenty of options, but all are super simple and very straightforward. Like you should just make a click, and that's all. Your content is already in your learner's hands. And that's a very natural, like that's a path that the customer kind of follows without a second thought. So frankly, we don't need to talk much about what 7 taps is and how it works. In fact, we don't even resort to giving some marketing promises like it's a very simple, it's kind of the simplest, blah, blah, blah. We put 7 taps product right on our website. It's on the main page. You can poke around, you can understand how it works, you can create a sample, and that's all. Like that's how people understand the simplicity. You don't need to talk much, just show it.
No, Well, and I think it is something that seeing it really does help. And I think one of the things that you bring up with that is really helpful is you've taken this approach, and I think it's a good one with the product, in that some companies, tech companies, not to be named, but they're very much about, well, our goal is to be the destination, whatever. And even from the start, you've been very much like, we want to make it easy. And so easy might mean we need to fit into your existing ecosystem. Easy might mean we want to make it so easy that if somebody makes something and goes, I just need to give it to somebody like right now, that they can, and they don't have to figure out, well, how do I get the SCORM? And then where do I load it? And if I literally just made something and go, I need to share this with someone, let's make it as easy as that. And I think what's interesting about that I've personally observed through this, and I'm curious if you see this, is, people have done really creative things with it, which, by the way, folks, if you're commenting, I'm watching some of these things now, but people are using it in really creative ways, which I also love the fact that while you're a micro-learning platform, because you haven't spent quite as much time saying, and we're used for this thing, while still kind of giving people direction, people have done some creative things. I mean, I'm just looking here, Lindsay, I've seen people do stuff like this where they go, I used it to present information to things in a job interview. I've heard stories of people who are taking this because it's a simple way to take information, make it digestible, and easily share it. I've seen people do all sorts of creative, really cool stuff with this, which you don't always see with other tools.
Yeah, and one of the greatest surprises for me as a founder happened, I guess, last year when I was working on putting together our case studies webpage. Frankly, I didn't anticipate that number of cases when our customers use 7 tabs to reinforce leadership training, compliance training. Actually, it turned out that almost any kind of training can be leveraged and enhanced with those little nudges that help you actually put into practice all the knowledge you got previously. And yes, we have really large companies who we serve, like Giorgio Armani, Cisco, Teva Pharmaceutical. You can see some really nice logos on our website. And at the same time, there are some stories that with some emotional impact for me as a founder. Just let me share some of them. There are some folks who use 7 tabs to deliver some micro courses to people who got released from prison, youngsters. And it's kind of a very touching thing because it's micro-learning. And when you think about the situation, you understand that they won't probably spend more than 5 minutes on any training content. And with those little nudges of information, kind of the tool, I'm hoping that it helps to change someone's lives for better. Another story, we have a user from hospice who is aiming to create 7 tabs assets to support people related with some very tough situations in their life. And again, they don't have time to go through anything longer than, 3-5 minutes, and they need knowledge distilled to its essence. And that's where 7 tabs comes into play. These stories are not kind of in the public eye. They are so very, human-like. We have, I'm pretty sure you're sick and tired of listening about the case studies.
No, I like this stuff because what it's highlighting is when people say, because again, I deal a lot with questions from folks who they go, well, when would I use it? How would I use it? And what's interesting about even just some of the human stories you're sharing behind this is it's almost one of those like, well, when would you not? Is almost more my question, but like, when wouldn't you do this? Because is it, and we've said this before on many occasions, is it the replacement for everything? No,
No.
no, it doesn't replace everything. Don't put that in your head. But what things are you doing where some sort of simple, easy, like here's the Cliff Notes version to help you take this and do something with it? When do you ever have a situation where you go, that wouldn't be really helpful to supplement, to augment whatever I'm doing? And I think some of these examples that you're giving, I just, again, even the one, young people just coming out of prison, are they going to probably need more formal education and things over time to help them be able to, continue to get out of that cycle? Yes. We're not saying, oh yeah, make a 7 taps course and they're good for the rest of it. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is in that moment where they're first transitioning, one of the most vulnerable moments where they just need, what is the next step that I need to do to just get from point A to point B? Because honestly, that's all I can think about right now. And I think of how many situations where people really are languishing with that same thing going, I understand there's something bigger, but right now, all I can think about is what is the next thing I need to do to be able to get across, put one foot in front of the other. And I think there's no situation where I go, yeah, no, that wouldn't be helpful at all.
Yeah, and actually, getting back to some corporate environment, the most common scenario for 7 taps within a company is like when one department tries it out for the, in most cases, it starts from the L&D department, of course, but then other departments see some, 7 taps, tiny little knowledge bites, and they ask what is the tool, and they see how they can leverage it in their routine, like customer education or marketing, or sometimes within a team when a manager shares something that can be kind of consumed quickly for your team, for a newcomer. And that's amazing how many scenarios I've been seeing, like starting from the reinforcing leadership training, safety training, compliance training, sales enablement. Sales enablement is just kind of a brand new field for us, and we see companies creating bottle cards, kind of how to overcome this particular customer objection. Kind of a small pieces of information that can fit the routine of the person. It's just work brilliantly.
Yeah. No, it's funny because a lot of times I'm surprised. A lot of times in our industry, we don't always think of the sales enablement side, but like they're like our sister counterpart. I mean, honestly, sales enablement it's sales training in many regards. It's just a new flavor of what they call it. But like you said, a lot of times what are these bite-sized pieces of things that these folks need? And I don't know that I've encountered anybody in L&D that for some of these bigger macro type learning experiences, there's always this gap, this hole where people go, the program's good, but we have all this stuff that we know people need after or along the way. And they struggle a lot of times with like, but we don't really know what to do with it. We maybe made a PDF and it sits over here, and we made a thing and it's on a SharePoint site. And it ends up being this discombobulated mess of stuff. And as a result, it doesn't get any use. And the actual end user is the one that loses. And honestly, it ends up being a big waste of our time because we create all these assets that end up not actually getting used.
Yeah. And, just being a leader of a team, I also need to go through some leadership trainings, and I try to learn as much as I can. And sometimes I feel, I would appreciate if someone shared with me some nudges to implement some skills, and probably just some little reminders of what I've previously learned from great webinar, from a great course. And just if anyone wants to become my coach, that would be great.
but that's exactly what we're getting at with some of these reinforcement pieces. Is it works in tandem alongside this stuff. It really does pair well with it, where you go, yeah, people need to acquire some of this knowledge. They need the opportunity to practice these skills in these macro settings. But then how do you carry that out and sustain that? Well, it's that along the way, you're nudging people and saying, hey, here's another resource to jumpstart that memory and give you something actionable to walk you through, hey, here's some support to help you actually put this into practice. So again, I think for folks who are listening and watching, instead of asking, is there a place I could use it? It really is more of a, well, no, is there a place you couldn't? And then starting to get creative with it. So with that, I actually want to spend some time talking about this because we've talked about the simplicity of it, but there's a lot under the hood that people may not even realize. Like if you look at, honestly, if you look at the tool and you just look at a basic example, you might be like, okay, but there's a lot behind the scenes and even just your roadmap of things that you've added and the way you've changed it. And, as a spoiler, folks, we're going to get into some of this content automation that's all over the place of like, everybody thinks Chat GPT is going to take over the world, but there really is a place for some of this automation of content. So I just love to hear, how has the product evolved from a features and functionality? And, I saw a spoiler in here of one of the latest release things. I'd love to talk about some of this functionality that you're really seeing stand out to users. Because it's one thing to say, hey, there's a place that you can easily take bite-sized bits of knowledge and nudges and easily put it into something. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is an assumption that simplest things are very easy to come up with, but the fact is that they take much more effort. Yeah, they're the hardest. It's true. And with 7 tabs, that when we add new features, we try, first of all, stick to that simplicity concept, and we carefully weigh whether it will make 7 tabs user experience more cumbersome or not. And if the feature is really valid, we try to find out the solution of how to make it super user-friendly. In terms of upcoming features, you've spilled the tea, and I'd probably confirm it that yes, AI Microlearning Builder is coming pretty soon. We are about to release it, and I know that lots of folks will be super excited about it. I'm the person who believes in AI as a productivity booster. I don't think it will ever replace anyone, just unless you do some really routine job, but it can definitely help you to create some drafts, to create some bases that can eventually turn into some masterpieces. Yeah. And in terms of adding new features, as I've already mentioned, we are very customer driven. And for example, what I mean, we keep an eye on how customers use 7tabs. And we noticed that lots of them came up with an idea of creating some microlearning libraries with 7tabs courses. They would use different tools and solutions, from creating some platforms, coding them, to just simply creating Google Doc folders. And then
it's almost like a hub in some ways, like almost a hub where it was like, we're using 7tabs, but we recognize we have some of these other things. And so we're always trying, and that's what I was getting at. This kind of like, what do we do with it?
Yeah, so we invented microlearning portal in 7tabs. It works as easy as creating a piece of content. Then you just put your courses into a folder, you share them, and the experience for your learner is the same easy as if it were just a single learning asset. Then we, not then, but just another example, we noticed that loads of our clients used Slack to deliver 7tabs courses. They would go either sharing them in some channels or direct messaging them. So we just added that integration with Slack that allows you to send out that micro course directly to your learner and see how your content performs within 7tabs. That's how we kind of evolve the product. We try to analyze users' behavior. We try to understand what solutions will make them happier, and we try to make them we try to implement them in the simplest possible way.
Yeah. Well, and so to unpack or just at least recap those two, because there's another one I want to ask about, because it was a feature even I was like, whoa, the technical side of this is intense. And people were just glossing over it. I'm like, I don't think you realize how significant this is. But so the portals piece, I think, is extremely helpful in that, like you said, a lot of times there are multiple assets that go alongside with something. And when you don't have a place for it, there is either this tendency to be like, well, we'll just throw it everywhere, which then nobody uses it. Or that's how you end up with a Franken course where you're like, well, they need this and they also need this and they also need this. And it takes away from the purity of this thing should be strictly focused on this. And then we can keep a separate thing. So it sounds like the portal then allows you to say, hey, we can keep these things very simple and focused, but we can put them in one place so that for an end user, they don't have to go try and keep track and look around for all these things. Is that fair?
You've just described it perfectly. And
Okay.
regarding the experience, our users creating 7 tabs using folders, mainly they start with creating a spaced learning chain.
Okay.
Like you can automate content delivery within 7 tabs.
Yep.
And in every piece of content, you have that link to the folder, to that
Okay.
microlearning portal, so that a person, if they need to recall something they got previously or got back to something that helped them out and they just stumble upon this
So
problem
you're
issue.
actually embedding it so that if they're seeing even one of the resources, it's also helping those folks go, there's actually more. So like
Yep.
if you're in one and you happen to have just seen this one thing, you can be like, oh, it directs you back to this portal of other things as well.
Yeah, and kind of 7 tabs may seem like a very simple product with some um, um, limited set of features, but in fact, it all boils down to the way you use it. You can
Yeah.
create branching
Yeah.
scenarios. You can create asynchronous training experiences. We have a great example of our user, Jason. Jason, I'm pretty sure you are here. I can't see you in the chat. But he just created a great learning path consisting with 7 tabs courses and LinkedIn posts, asking people to comment in the under the post itself, then addressing them to the next 7 tabs byte. You can create learning paths with that folders behind. You can create 7 tabs, separate 7 tabs courses. So it really
It's very flexible.
comes down to your creativity and your learning needs. It's very
Yeah.
flexible.
Well, and I think one of the things that you hit on that I think a lot of times goes unspoken with this is even the examples you've given that are about a little bit outside the box or a unique flavor of these things. There is this blend of the tech itself will not do this. It really, it's a shift in even our thinking, I think sometimes and I think this is a push for people in our industry to think outside the box of how we've maybe historically grown up with digital content design and kind of this idea that, well, it has to look like this. Because I've seen examples, maybe not with 7 tabs, but I've seen examples where people have been given a totally unique tool and they try and turn it back into what they did before. They're like, well, how do I make it exactly like I did in this other thing? And you're like, no, get creative with some of these things. Like that example you just gave of Jason, where it's like, get creative with it. Like think about the different assets and how can you use social learning to engage. And I think this is where some of your marketing background really comes out in even the use of the tool of being able to say, it's about reaching people in different, unique, and creative ways versus doing the same thing you've always done and then just repackaging it in a different skin. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen is some of the folks who have done phenomenal things with 7 taps, they haven't tried to make 7 taps be a legacy e-learning tool. They've said, I can do whatever I want with this. And how can I creatively leverage the tool?
Yeah, I've seen so many great examples of 7 tabs assets sometimes not even micro courses with no learning goals, but sharing a story or sharing some news, or just using 7 tabs for corporate communication. And those were just really wonderful pieces. And it's always amazing how people came up with ideas that didn't actually came to me when I was building 7 tabs. They're so
Yeah.
innovative. That's why we are not launching, that's why we are running regularly creator contests. We've seen so many great assets created by the community. It's something that makes me really proud of what we've built over here.
Well, and it's brilliant on your part. Again, I think it's brilliant on your part. You do this with your user community, because what it does is it even allows you as the product development team to see what people are doing and then go, oh, if they're doing that, imagine if we could make that easier. Or what if we could tweak or modify the design to bring something like that to life? So I actually think it's a brilliant partnership between you and your community.
And just yeah, we're running late, so probably I should also spill the tea on some other features that are coming out next. We are hugely kind of enhancing our reporting. So then the next release will kind of present the updated statistics part, and we are also about to launch integration with Microsoft Teams. Actually, that was the #1 request after the integration with Slack.
I was going to say, once you said you integrated with Slack, I'm like, Teams has to either be right there or on the heels of it, because once you start going the integration into the workplace productivity tools, then people are just like, well, yeah, of course we need this, because this is where people are doing their work anyway.
Okay. So yeah, sign up for 7tabs. And actually, on our website, 7tabs.com, we have a waiting list for beta testers of our AI.
Elena shared it. She shared it in the comments. So I knew she's on it, right? She's on it. So I did see that, which actually the last part that I want to get to, because again, I think it's exciting for people to hear some of this. But one of the things I want to tap into with the time we have left is kind of this whole thing around AI and what that means. Because while we're talking about, where the next generation is going is content automation, which I know that can be very terrifying for folks to think like, what? Like AI generating content? Actually, I think it's a beautiful thing, and it allows us to spend more time on higher order things versus some of these other things. But this isn't new for you either. That's the thing, because I think back to the features you added with your the avatars that you incorporated into it, and your ability to do different language through natural voice. I mean, you've been playing in the AI space with your tool for a bit. Like the fact that you're tapping into maybe content generation in your next gen, that's great. But and I think it's fantastic. So I don't want to undersell that. But I'm saying like AI is not new to you. This isn't like, oh, we've never really dealt in the AI space, because you've been playing in this. So I'm curious, how do you see people? What is the response from people on some of this stuff when you start talking about using artificial intelligence, whether it's to create, humanoids to be able to have natural language conversations in the tool, or as you move into the next generation of augmenting design with automation and tech? One, how are you looking at that? I think you hinted at it a little bit, but also what's been the response from folks?
First of all, I should say that the technology we use for creating avatars is created by Synthesia. And if you need to create some longer assets, you can go directly to them. That's the greatest technology out there. And for me, and I guess for our customers, it's not like AI technology. The thing is that it fits 7tabs process so naturally that you don't even think whether it is AI or not. You are on the flow of creating some piece of content, training content. And just as everything with 7tabs, it works super smoothly. And with the next feature, that AI microlearning builder, I'm pretty sure that people won't pay much attention and, take time to think whether they should try this out or not, and how
Yeah.
AI may influence the way they work, and whether this technology may take the job from them. No, it's just the essential flow of how you can get that productivity booster with your content creation job. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I love that you frame it that way. And I actually think there's an opportunity. I mean, we could probably have a whole session just on this, but that to me is, as I've watched you start to incorporate some of these artificial intelligent elements into 7 Taps, you've done it very beautifully in the way that you even just described, where it doesn't feel like, oh, this AI is coming in and intruding on what I'm doing. It's like, no, this is your workflow. The AI is just there behind the scenes helping automate some of this stuff along the way. And I think it's a very helpful way to approach it, because it does freak some people out. But then if they
Yes.
actually knew what AI was, you'd realize you're using it all the time. Like, already, you think it's this futuristic thing. You've been using it everywhere for quite a long time. Like, I even think of Grammarly. I mean, if you're using
Yep.
Grammarly, you're using AI to help you write better. And is that taking away your creativity? No, it's just helping say, hey, have you thought about saying it like this instead of like this? Have you considered that the word structure of this doesn't feel very friendly? I mean, that's artificial intelligence just augmenting what you're doing. And I think, based on what you described, it sounds like the way you're approaching that with content design isn't like, oh, this bot takes over the design and then it hands something back to me and I edit it. It's, well, no, we already know you're trying to do some of these things. So we'll augment it with artificial intelligence to help speed up that part of it, so that you have to do less thinking and writing along the way, but you're still just as involved in the process.
Absolutely. I cannot add anything. Thank you so much for noticing that in 7 Taps. And yes, just for me, the flow of work is what matters most. And we try to do our best to make it as simple as possible, and to make instructional designers, learning and development managers, and other folks who use 7 Taps lives easier, because there are so many other things for you to deal with. I just try to, help out with what we can do for you. That's our
Yeah.
motto.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it's just, you have done a really good job. And Tristan, you brought this up, that again, I think highlights this. When we think about, I just even think about what you did with your AI voice generation in there, and how it didn't feel intrusive, because it's like, this was something we were trying to do anyway, but it often was very clunky. It was very difficult figuring out, like, okay, how do we translate this, or how do we get this spoken in natural voice? And oh gosh, we got to go do voiceover and try and record. Oh, that wasn't the right thing. And it was a very time consuming, bulky thing. And so to just integrate it in and go, hey, are you trying to do this anyway? Well, here's a feature that's just going to, you tell us where you want it to do it, and then just let us take care of that for you. That doesn't feel threatening. And I think the folks who do this AI thing very well are going to get that right. And they're going to recognize that it's like, no, the point isn't to create a competition between the artificial and the human counterparts, but instead recognize this is the general workflow. And hey, where are people getting stuck with these tedious, rote, mundane tasks? Well, let's just fix that. Let's just fix it and make work easier for everybody.
Yeah, that's brilliantly put. And sometimes I feel that probably people got embarrassed with the LinkedIn feed, oversaturated with some cheap prompts on how to use ChatGPT, and they may think that it's overrated, and they just feel confused. But
Yes.
social media content is always social media content. Do not
I
take it for
know.
granted.
Yes,
So
I
just
agree.
AI is here to stay. When I was thinking about how this conversation may evolve, I thought that we would touch the topic of microlearning itself. And I always keep an eye on some trends of the year lists. And I barely have seen any mentions of microlearning for the 2023. And I feel that it's just because now everyone understands that microlearning is here to stay. That it's not a trend, thankfully, but
Yeah.
it's just something that is here, and it's not a myth. It's not a kind of a um, marketing thing. It's just the approach
No,
that really helps people out.
it's baked into the lifeblood. Now, I will say, for those who didn't watch my trend series, I did include microlearning,
Really?
but I
Oh,
did,
I missed it.
I did. But the reason I did is I said, not for this like trendy type of a thing, but the capabilities of being able to do microlearning better and more effectively. I think, I think this year we're going to see a lot of technical capabilities that are going to make what we're talking about, because like you said, I think microlearning has matured to a state where it's just part of the lifeblood of things. People just expect it. We don't talk about like, are you doing that microlearning thing? Like, what?
Thanks
What are you
God.
talking about? Like, of course we are. That's like saying, do you do training? Like, yes. But I think the way it's going to be executed and the technical capabilities of how much easier, faster, and meaningful it's going to be, to me, I'm like, and I think what you're talking about, where Seven Taps is going this year, I do feel like people should be paying attention to it, because if your way of doing micro learning, that's great if it's baked into your lifeblood already. But if you're doing it a certain way, to me, you better be ready to flip that on its head in 2023, because I think the way you do that and the way you approach it, there's going to be some major innovation in it this year. That's my take on it. So mine was a much more in-depth, like, micro learning's a thing. Like, micro learning's been a thing since like I was in diapers. But like what you can do with it, that's changing really fast right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, Kate, I just have to say thank you so much. Thanks to the huge group of folks for all the comments and the input along the way. It was so much fun having this conversation. And again, what a fun conversation for me to have as like my first live Learning Tech Talks back in 2023. So I appreciate you making the time all the way from Dubai and joining me for an hour. This was a blast.
Absolutely, likewise. And I do enjoy sharing all these things with you, Christopher, and with the community. Unfortunately, I cannot see the comments, but I will get back to the LinkedIn post
You can
and
go
wrap
look at them
that.
afterwards. There's a ton of them. So
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining in. I do appreciate it, and that's such an honor to speak here second time. So I'm
yeah.
hoping the third time will be even more excited.
I mean, if Microlearning Conference is any sort of trend of our trajectory of conversations, I guarantee the third Learning Tech Talks will be the best one yet. So yeah, no, we got a high bar. So thank you again.
You're too
Thanks
kind.
everybody. It's been an absolute blast. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we will see you on the other side.